The wind moved like a slow breath through the morning mist, stirring dust across the gravel yard. Fences leaned with the weight of time, their wood splintered and sun-worn. A red-tailed hawk circled high above the auction grounds, casting a shadow that passed over pens filled with restless, shifting horses. The sun hadn't quite risen yet, just a smear of gold on the edge of the horizon, but the voices of men had already begun to rise. Sadie Garrison walked between the rows of animals like a ghost moving through memory. Her boots were caked in old mud, her denim jacket torn at one elbow. She moved deliberately, hand on a clipboard, the same way she had for the past 5 years at the Whetstone livestock auction. The work was steady and hard, and it kept her out of her own head, most days. She paused near a corner pen, her eyes narrowing. One of the mares wasn't right. Chestnut coat dulled by neglect, ribs showing faintly beneath her flank. The mare shifted uncomfortably, swishing her tail and pawing at the dry ground. Sadie tilted her head. "You're wound tight this morning," she murmured. The mare flicked an ear, eye rolling slightly. The tag clipped to her halter read number 241. No name, no history. Just another lot. Still, something clung to her, an unease Sadie recognized, bone deep. She scribbled a note on her clipboard. Behind her, the diesel rattle of a flatbed pickup cut through the air. The day was beginning. Ranchers started arriving, flanked by dogs and dust. Saddles slapped against tailgates. Men barked across the lot with cigarettes hanging from their mouths. And in the middle of it all, Sadie turned and walked away from the nervous mare, the echo of her unease shadowing each step. In the auction office, the air smelled like stale coffee and old receipts. Greg, the auctioneer, leaned back in his chair, boots on the desk, flipping through the day's lineup. "You see that crazy bronc they dropped off last night?" he said without looking up. Looked like he'd seen war. Sadie nodded absently. "There's a mare in pen 5. Number 241. Looks too far along. She shouldn't be in rotation." Greg scoffed. "She's on the list." Her owner signed the forms. No vet records, no fuss. "She's close," Sadie said, a hard edge creeping into her voice. "She's laboring. You'll have a mess in the arena if you run her." Greg finally looked up. "You know how many folks are selling sick stock just to make ends meet? Can't hold everyone back. If she drops, she drops. Buyer beware." Sadie stared at him for a beat, then turned without a word. She hated how much she let slide these days. Hated how little fight she had left. Back outside, the yard had swelled with people. Boots kicked dust into the rising sun. A boy no older than 10 swung from a fence rail, laughing as his father spat chew and talked about weight ratios. Sadie moved past them, brushing shoulders with a man in a shearling coat who smelled of beer and horses. When she reached pen 5 again, the mare, #241, was pressed against the rail, sides heaving. Her body slicked with sweat despite the chill. Sadie's heart sank. There was no longer any doubt. "Damn it," she whispered. A shout from the arena signaled the first call. The auction had begun. Sadie jogged down the row, cursing quietly. She needed gloves, clean towels, water, anything. By the time she returned, 2 handlers were already hooking a lead rope to the mare's halter. "She's not fit to go in," Sadie snapped. The younger of the 2 men, barely more than a kid, blinked at her. Orders said lot 241. "We're behind schedule already. She's in labor. You haul her into that ring and she'll collapse in front of 200 people." "I ain't arguing," the kid said, releasing the rope. "But you tell Greg. I'm not catching heat for holding things up." The mare let out a low, guttural sound that silenced the nearby pens. Her legs trembled. Sadie moved closer, palm against the mare's neck. "I'm not going to let them drag you out there," she whispered. "Not like this." But her protest came too late. The loudspeaker crackled, "Lot 241 to the arena. Bring her in." The older handler, more experienced, grimaced and yanked the rope. "We don't got time for this." Sadie stepped forward. If she goes down in there, she could die. Then it'll be on you, the man said. Not us. The mare stumbled forward under the tension, her hooves scraping the gravel. She cried out, deep, raw, the sound of something ancient and terrified. The crowd parted as she was led through the auction gates, her gait uneven, her belly heaving. Sadie followed without thinking. She dropped her clipboard, wiped her hands on her jeans, and pushed past two bidders just as the mare collapsed with a heavy thud in the dirt-floored arena. Gasps rose from the bleachers. The auctioneer hesitated, microphone halfway to his mouth. For a moment, all motion ceased. The mare thrashed weakly, legs twitching. Foam gathered at the corner of her mouth. Her breathing turned shallow and rapid. Sadie dropped to her knees beside her, hands trembling as she reached toward the mare's flank. She's rupturing, Sadie said aloud, to no one and everyone. She's going into full labor. Greg's voice blared from the speakers. Hold bidding, ladies and gentlemen, we have an unexpected situation here. Someone in the crowd yelled, put her down if she's dying. Another voice, this is a livestock auction, not a birthing clinic. But no one moved. No one dared. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The mare cried out again, body arching. Her water broke in a sudden, shocking flood, soaking the dirt. Mud mixed with blood. The crowd recoiled. Sadie didn't. She shoved her jacket under the mare's head and called out, towels! Someone get me clean towels. And water. No one responded. Then a voice broke through. I'll help. A young man pushed forward, barely out of his teens, lanky and wide-eyed. He knelt beside her without hesitation. Name's Lucas, he said. Tell me what to do. Sadie blinked once, then nodded. Keep her head still. Keep talking to her. Calm her, if you can. Lucas murmured to the mare, soft nonsense words that somehow sounded like comfort. Sadie reached behind the hind legs, fingers searching. Her breath caught. Breech, she muttered. Lucas frowned. Is that bad? Worse than bad. I need to turn it. Or they both die. Her fingers were already slick with fluid. She worked quickly but gently, guided only by instinct and memory. Years of experience came rushing back, both the triumphs and the losses. Her body knew what to do. Her heart was another matter. Time blurred. The crowd faded. There was only the mare, the trembling warmth of her body, the weight of new life trapped inside. Sadie adjusted her grip, shifted her arm deeper. She could feel the foal's back legs now, slippery and fragile. She rotated carefully, 1 inch at a time. Lucas pressed his forehead to the mare's neck. Come on, girl, he whispered. You've got this. The mare shuddered. Sadie felt the foal shift, the angle changing, still dangerous, but better. She nodded once, to herself more than anyone. I think I've got it. We push on the next contraction. Lucas looked at her. How will I know? You'll feel it, she said. And then it came, a full body spasm from the mare, a low grunt of effort and pain. Sadie pulled. The foal began to emerge, hooves slick and curled inward. The arena held its breath. One shoulder. Then another. The foal slipped free and collapsed into the mud, a motionless heap of wet limbs. Sadie sat back on her heels, breathing hard. Lucas stared. He's not moving. The mare turned her head, whinnying weakly. Her eyes locked on the foal. Sadie moved fast. She grabbed a towel from someone in the crowd, she didn't even know who, and began to rub the foal's chest, then its ribs, then its face. Come on, baby, she whispered. Come on. Breathe. Lucas knelt beside her, watching, waiting. The silence in the arena was crushing. Sadie leaned down, pressed her lips over the foal's tiny nostrils, and exhaled. Again. Again. Her eyes were glassy. Her voice shook. You don't get to quit, she said. Not after all this. And still, the foal didn't move. Someone behind her began to cry softly. Another cowboy took off his hat, holding it to his chest. The mare whinnied again, desperate and low. Sadie clenched her jaw. "Breathe, damn you. You have to." The foal jerked. A gasp spread like fire through the crowd. It twitched again, then coughed, small, raspy, like air rustling through broken leaves. Lucas let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "He's breathing." Sadie didn't answer. Her hands were still on the foal, trembling. Her shoulders shook as she exhaled, one long, shaking breath. The mare's eyes fluttered closed. Her chest rose and fell, slow but steady. The foal, slick and fragile, whimpered softly. Sadie looked up, her face flushed with sweat and dust. Across the arena, dozens of eyes stared back, some red, some wet, none untouched. Greg cleared his throat over the loudspeaker, but for once, had nothing to say. Sadie brushed a trembling hand across the foal's head. "Welcome to the world," she said. And far above, the hawk wheeled again, its cry high and sharp as the sun broke through the mist. The dust had begun to settle, but the silence in the arena lingered like smoke after a fire. The foal lay curled against its mother, slick with afterbirth and too still. Sadie stayed crouched, her hands gently massaging the tiny chest, waiting for the rhythmic rise and fall to grow steadier. The breath had come, but barely. One shuddering inhale, then shallow flickers, fragile as flame on wet wood. Lucas knelt beside her, his hands slack in his lap. "He's breathing," he whispered again, as if repeating it could make it more true. His voice carried the stunned awe of a boy witnessing something sacred for the first time. Sadie didn't look up. Her eyes were locked on the foal's ribs. She counted silently. The breath was inconsistent. Too irregular. Not strong enough. Not yet. Around them, the crowd remained rooted. No one dared speak above a murmur. A few turned away, unable to watch. But most stood in place, eyes glassy, mouths half open. Even Greg, the usually unflappable auctioneer, stood with his microphone lowered, lips pressed thin. Sadie cleared the foal's nostrils again, wiping more fluid away. "Don't stop now," she said under her breath. "You're almost there." The mare, exhausted, rolled slightly to press her muzzle against her foal's side. The soft, broken sound that came from her throat pulled at something deep in Sadie's chest. She wasn't just tired. She was frightened. "He needs heat," Sadie said suddenly, sharper now. "Blanket. Lamp if we've got one. He's too cold." Lucas stood like he'd been jolted. On it. He turned and ran, literally sprinted, toward the back stalls where equipment was stored. Sadie stayed kneeling. Her knees throbbed from the hard-packed dirt, but she didn't notice. Her fingers kept moving, stimulating circulation. She checked the foal's hooves, still soft and curled inward. Everything about him screamed, not ready. But he was here. And that had to mean something. A slow breath in. The foal's head twitched. "Yes," she said, barely more than a whisper. "That's it. Keep going." Someone approached quietly. A cowboy she vaguely recognized, older, maybe 60s, with a silver mustache and dark eyes. He knelt and set a folded canvas coat beside her. "For warmth," he said simply. Sadie nodded, murmuring thanks without looking away. She draped it over the foal gently, careful not to block his nose or mouth. His ears, folded and wet, flickered once. Barely. But it was movement. He was trying. Lucas returned with an extension cord and a heat lamp cradled in his arms like it was made of glass. Another man behind him carried a portable generator. Together they worked fast, stringing the cord, positioning the lamp over the foal without Sadie ever needing to speak. In the background, the auction's PA system clicked back on. Greg cleared his throat again. "We'll be taking a brief break to allow the situation to stabilize," he said in a stiff, formal tone. "Please remain respectful as we resume shortly." It was the only concession he could give without admitting how deeply shaken he was. Sadie remained crouched. She didn't speak unless necessary. Her focus had narrowed to two creatures and the thin line between breath and stillness. Minutes passed. 10. Then 20. Gradually, the foal's breathing grew more consistent. His front legs twitched again. He gave a weak kick, then whimpered, a pitiful, high sound. But it was sound. Sadie's chest tightened. "He's got fight in him," Lucas said softly. Sadie glanced at him for the first time in minutes. His cheeks were flushed, hair damp with sweat, eyes wide and wild with adrenaline. "You done this before?" she asked. "No, ma'am." "You did good." Lucas smiled. It wasn't much, just a flicker, but it lit something behind his eyes. The kind of smile that sticks. Another contraction shuddered through the mare. Sadie turned quickly. Her tailbone rose, hooves scraped the dirt again. Sadie moved to check. No more foals. Just the afterbirth. Messy but expected. "Okay," she whispered. "You're through the worst of it." She looked down at her hands. Shaking. Covered in fluid, blood, grit. She couldn't remember when they'd started trembling. She stood slowly, knees stiff and screaming. Her whole body ached. But the foal was alive. And that mattered more than anything else. A soft cough behind her drew her attention. It was the same silver-mustached cowboy. He looked reluctant. "I got a trailer with clean bedding," he said. "If she needs somewhere quiet, I can set up." Sadie stared at him. "You offering space?" He shrugged, eyes scanning the arena. "Ain't just me. Lot of these boys seen enough death this year. This right here, we needed this." Sadie swallowed, throat dry. She hadn't cried. She wouldn't, not yet. But her voice cracked as she answered. "I'll need help getting her up. I'll get the boys." He turned and whistled sharply. 3 men jumped the railing without being asked. Cowboys in denim and flannel, with faces like old oak trees, weathered and unreadable, but they moved gently, reverently. Lucas leaned down to the foal again. "Hey there, little guy. Time to see what you're made of." The foal gave another soft cough. His legs flailed weakly. Sadie knelt again, placing her hands beneath his belly. With Lucas's help, they lifted him, awkwardly, gently, to his feet. He swayed, wobbled, then collapsed again. But his head stayed up. "That's okay," Sadie said. "Try again in a bit." Juniper, the mare, let out a soft exhale and attempted to rise. One of the cowboys moved to brace her shoulder. She groaned, legs quivering. With a final push, she stood. She swayed but stayed upright. The arena remained silent. One of the younger cowboys watching muttered, "I never seen anything like that." Lucas replied without looking away from the foal. "Neither have I." Sadie didn't speak. Her mind was still tangled in the sounds, the flashes of movement, the panic, the weight of memory. Her hands still felt the shape of the foal's body before it moved. She could still taste the dust and blood on the air. "You all right?" Lucas asked gently. She blinked. "No. But I will be." Together they guided Juniper and her newborn to the edge of the arena. The men had already opened the side gate, clearing a path to the stalls. Straw had been laid in one of the unused holding pens. A heat lamp buzzed softly overhead. It was no hospital, but it was warm and dry. Safe. Sadie led Juniper with a loose grip, her other hand steadying the foal who stumbled beside them like a newborn deer. The crowd parted like a river around a stone. Silent. Respectful. More than one man wiped his eyes when they thought no one was looking. Inside the stall, Juniper settled immediately, curling her body around the foal protectively. Lucas leaned against the gate, watching them both. "You think he'll make it?" Sadie exhaled slowly. "I think he wants to. That's the first thing. And the second?" She met his gaze. "Now we help him want it more." Lucas nodded, quiet. "You got a name for him?" Sadie hesitated. Names had weight. Names made things real. Permanent. No, she said finally. Not yet. He didn't push. Just stood there with her, as the afternoon sun crept across the dirt floor, and the soft sounds of horses in nearby pens replaced the chaos that had ruled the morning. The auction resumed hours later, quieter than before. Greg spoke in a lower tone. Bids were shorter. No one joked loudly. Something had shifted. Sadie sat on an overturned bucket beside Juniper's stall, arms crossed, body aching. She hadn't left them. Not yet. Lucas returned from the office with a sandwich in one hand and a blanket slung over his shoulder. They said you can rest in the tack room. You look like you need it. Sadie took the sandwich but shook her head. Can't leave yet. Lucas nodded and sat nearby. The foal shifted again, legs stretching. He let out a high-pitched whinny that startled both of them. Juniper blinked but didn't move. Her eyes stayed on her baby. Sadie leaned her head back against the wall, eyes drifting shut for a moment. You ever lose one before? Lucas asked quietly. The silence stretched before she answered. Yes. Bad. She opened her eyes, staring into the dim stall light. There was a mare. My daughter's horse. She went into labor early. Complications. Vet didn't make it in time. I tried to save them both. I couldn't. Lucas didn't respond. The weight of it didn't need words. My daughter blamed me, Sadie added. She was 14. She never said it out loud, but she didn't have to. She stopped speaking to me not long after. Lucas ran his thumb along the edge of the bucket. That why you stopped vet work? Sadie nodded. Didn't trust myself anymore. They sat in silence. The only sound was the foal's weak, wet breathing and Juniper's low, steady exhale. But today, Lucas said softly, you trusted yourself. Sadie looked at him. Yeah, she whispered. I guess I did. Outside, the sun began its slow descent behind the barn. A wind rolled through the emptying pens. And in the quiet of that stall, beside a mare who wasn't supposed to survive and a foal who had no business breathing, something shifted in Sadie's chest. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the beginning of it. She reached through the gate and placed a hand on the foal's warm, shaking side. Rest now, she said. We've got a long road ahead. The wind had shifted by morning. It moved with urgency now, a dry current carrying dust and the scent of hay through the barn rafters. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called 3 times, sharp and hollow. Sadie stood at the stall gate, one hand wrapped around a rusted hinge, the other resting lightly on her hip. Her eyes never left the foal. He was standing now. Barely. Spindly legs quivered beneath him, knees buckling at every uncertain step. But still, he moved. Still, he tried. Juniper watched closely, breathing slow and shallow, her head low but her gaze alert. Lucas leaned against the opposite side of the pen, sipping coffee from a styrofoam cup. His hat hung from a nail, hair a mess of sweat and straw. You think he knows how close he came? He asked. Sadie didn't look at him. No. But I do. Lucas nodded, watching the foal stumble again. He's tougher than he looks. He has to be. The silence that followed was companionable. Sadie didn't need to explain the weight behind those words. Not anymore. When the foal collapsed into the straw again, Sadie stepped into the stall and crouched beside him. Her fingers moved along his flank, checking muscle tone, heart rate, warmth. Juniper flicked an ear but didn't protest. The mare had accepted her now, in that unspoken way animals sometimes do, like they'd always known her. The foal's breathing had improved. Stronger. Still uneven, but holding steady. His eyes fluttered open and shut as he drifted between rest and fight, his tiny ribs rising and falling like soft bellows. He's stabilizing, Sadie said quietly. Lucas came closer. That mean we're out of the woods? Sadie shook her head. It means we can see the edge. There was a pause. Then Lucas asked, carefully, You slept at all? She glanced at him. Don't need to. You say that like it's a badge of honor. I say that like it's the truth. Lucas smiled faintly. You ever take help when it's offered? Not usually. Well, he said, good thing I'm stubborn. He handed her a protein bar, then moved into the stall, sitting cross-legged near Juniper's head. The mare shifted slightly toward him. He offered his palm, and she sniffed it with slow deliberation. You ever think about quitting? He asked after a moment. Sadie arched a brow. Quitting what? Everything. Walking away. Letting someone else carry it. She exhaled through her nose, not a laugh exactly, but close. There was a night, she said. Winter. I had the keys in my hand. Packed bags. A ticket to Arizona. I was gonna leave everything. Thought if I could just disappear, the guilt might go with me. Lucas didn't answer right away. The barn creaked overhead. The foal stirred again. But you didn't, he said eventually. No. Why? Sadie stared at the foal. Her hand moved to rest just above his heart. Because something in me wouldn't let go, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Lucas nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. The sound of boots outside the barn interrupted them. Voices. Sadie stood quickly, brushing straw from her knees as two figures appeared in the doorway. One was Greg. The other, taller, in a worn leather coat, was someone she hadn't seen in years. Her breath hitched. Sadie, Greg said, tone stiff, this here's Warren Liddell. Claims he's the registered owner of Juniper and wants to talk about his options. Warren removed his hat. His face was older, more lined than she remembered, but his eyes were still the same, cold, calculating. You got her standing, he said. Didn't think she had it in her. Sadie stepped forward, instinct curling her fingers into fists. She didn't have it in her. She had it forced on her. You knew she was pregnant. Warren shrugged. Didn't figure she'd carry full term. You dumped her. You left her to die in a bidding pit. She's mine. Paperwork says so. And the foal too. Sadie felt heat rise in her throat. Lucas moved beside her, tension radiating from his shoulders. She nearly died, Warren, Sadie said, voice low. That foal, he barely made it. And now you want to collect them like a prize. Greg shifted uncomfortably. He's within his rights. Lucas spoke before Sadie could. You got a name for the foal? Warren blinked. What? A name. You claim him. What's his name? Warren looked between them, confused. Doesn't matter. Lucas turned to Greg. But it does. You see a man walk into a hospital, claim a newborn he never met, never named, never wanted. You think that means he's got love in his heart? You think that's someone who should be trusted? Greg opened his mouth, but Sadie raised a hand. Let him have his say, she told Lucas. Then she faced Warren again. What are you really after? Warren smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. He'll fetch a price when he's older. Stud fee alone might make up what I lost on her. Sadie stepped forward. I'll buy them. Greg blinked. Sadie. I'll pay market value. For both. Cash. Warren scoffed. You don't have that kind of money. Sadie didn't blink. You don't know what I have. There was a long beat of silence. Then Greg cleared his throat. I'd advise mediation. There's a process. No, Sadie said, her voice steady. I'm not letting her go back to that man. Warren's expression hardened. Fine. You want them. $2,000. Today. Lucas stepped forward. I'll cover half. Sadie turned sharply. No. Lucas didn't budge. I got a savings account. Was gonna use it to buy a trailer. I'll get another trailer. I can't get another moment like this. Sadie stared at him, something unspoken hanging in the space between them. Greg muttered. You folks serious? Sadie looked at Warren. Draw up the bill of sale. 10 minutes later, the papers were signed. Warren left without another word. Greg lingered, visibly rattled. I'll make sure the transfer's official by morning, he said. For what it's worth. I didn't know. About the pregnancy. Sadie didn't answer. She just nodded once, then turned back to the stall. Lucas leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching Juniper breathe. You know what I think, he said. What's that? I think this little guy's gonna change your life. Sadie gave a dry laugh. He already has. Outside, the wind kicked up again, rattling the tin roof. The storm they hadn't noticed was brewing fast, and the sky beyond the barn had turned slate gray. Inside, the foal took another shaky step, then another. This time, he stayed standing. Sadie knelt, eyes level with his. You're gonna need a name soon, she said. Lucas smiled behind her. Something strong. Sadie ran a hand down the foal's neck, voice softer now. How about Chance? The foal whinnied softly, and Juniper leaned into him, her nose brushing his side. Chance, Sadie said again, testing the sound. Lucas gave a nod of approval. Fits him. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills. Sadie stood slowly, hands on her hips, eyes still on the foal. He's not out of the woods, she said. No, Lucas agreed. But he's walking. And somehow, that was enough, for now. The sky cracked open just before dawn. Not with thunder or lightning, but with a soft golden glow that bled slowly across the eastern horizon, painting the frost-covered roofs of the auction barns in fire. Steam rose from the warming earth. The horses shifted in their pens, stamping and snorting, their breath rising in clouds. The air smelled of hay, leather, and something new, something untouched. Sadie stood just outside the stall, arms folded, leaning against a frost-chilled post. Her face was worn but calm, and her eyes, rimmed red from sleepless hours, were steady. Inside the pen, Juniper dozed on her side. The foal, now named Chance, lay curled against her belly like a comma, warm beneath a blanket Lucas had cut from his own saddle pad. He had stood, walked, nursed, and now he slept. Lucas approached slowly, 2 enamel mugs steaming in his hands. His boots crunched softly on gravel, and when he handed Sadie her coffee, their fingers touched for half a second longer than needed. Still breathing? He asked, voice hushed like a prayer. Sadie nodded. Strong and steady. Lucas exhaled through a half-smile, as if the confirmation allowed his bones to unclench. He leaned beside her, sipping from his mug, eyes on the sleeping pair. They didn't speak for a while. Didn't need to. The quiet between them was not emptiness but understanding. A shared silence forged in sweat, blood, and breath. Greg said there's a reporter coming, Lucas muttered after a while. Sadie raised an eyebrow. You tell him to shove it? Lucas grinned. Tried. He said the guy's from some online thing. Viral videos. Horses that beat the odds. She shook her head. World loves a tragedy with a heartbeat. They do, he agreed. But sometimes, they just want to believe things can survive. Sadie said nothing. She sipped her coffee, letting the warmth bleed through her fingers. Later that morning, after the sun had fully crested and the barn hummed with chores, Sadie sat beside Juniper with a halter in her lap. She worked her fingers over the leather, rewinding the stitching from years ago. She hadn't touched it in a long time, not since the accident, not since the hospital. She used to do this beside her daughter's bed, waiting for news that never came, forgiveness that never arrived. Eventually, her daughter had stopped returning calls, and Sadie had stopped making them. But now she sat again, fingers moving, stitching old leather into something that could lead. Lucas joined her, easing into the straw. You going to keep him? Sadie didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were on Chance, who was nosing around Juniper's flank, searching again for milk. He wobbled but caught himself, instincts kicking in faster now. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't, she said finally. Lucas nodded. What about her? Juniper. Sadie looked at the mare, her eyes dark and soft and watching. She stays too. Good. Sadie glanced at him. You sticking around? He shrugged, but his smile betrayed him. Depends. You offering? Sadie laughed, a real one, low and unexpected. Maybe. That afternoon, the reporter arrived. Young, bright-eyed, overeager. He wore new boots and had the kind of questions that made Sadie's skin itch. He asked about the chaos, the tears, the drama. He wanted sound bites and hero angles. Lucas kept the guy busy, guiding him through the story gently, framing it like a quiet miracle instead of a spectacle. Sadie gave 2 sentences to the camera. He wasn't supposed to live, she said. But he did. That was all. The reporter left unsatisfied, but the barn breathed easier when he was gone. As the sun dipped low again, casting long shadows across the gravel lot, Sadie saddled an old quarter horse from the holding paddock. She needed to ride, to move, to let her body catch up to everything her mind had been carrying. Lucas watched her cinch the saddle. Want company? Not this time, she said. But soon. She rode along the ridge beyond the pens, where the pasture sloped into golden hills dotted with sage and fence lines. The cold air bit her cheeks, but the wind felt like cleansing fire. She rode until the barn shrank behind her, and all she could hear was the wind and the rhythm of hooves. She dismounted near a broken gate, and stood for a while with the reins looped in her fingers. This was where she'd planned to run once. Years ago. Same stretch of land. Same open sky. But the road out never quite pulled hard enough. Something always made her stay. Now she knew why. When she returned to the barn, the light inside was warm. Lucas had cleaned the stall. Juniper looked up at her and gave a soft nicker. Chance stood on his own now, teetering toward her like a curious shadow. She stepped into the pen, dropped to one knee, and let him come. He sniffed her hand. She didn't move. You remember me, she said softly. You remember I didn't let go. That night, after the chores were done and the auction yard had gone still, Sadie sat on the barn porch with Lucas. The stars stretched out like silver dust above them. I called her today, Sadie said suddenly. Lucas looked over. Your daughter. Sadie nodded. What did she say? She didn't answer, Sadie admitted. But I left a message. Told her I delivered a foal. Told her he made it. Told her. I thought of her the whole time. Lucas didn't try to comfort her. He just placed his hand over hers, quiet and steady. That's a start, he said. They stayed there until the cold drove them inside. Weeks passed. Chance grew. Juniper healed. Sadie laughed more, slept better, and slowly, carefully, started returning calls she once ignored. Sometimes she still stood alone at the edge of the property, looking out over the road and wondering if her daughter would ever walk up it again. But even if she didn't, Sadie had something else now. Not a replacement. Not a fix. But something real. She trained Chance with patience. With softness. The way she used to. Lucas helped. They built a routine. Feedings, walks, hoof checks. They didn't rush him. He didn't need to be rushed. He needed time, space, presence. Just like her. One evening, she found a small envelope tucked under the stall door. No name. Just the words, he deserved a chance. Inside was a check for $1,000. Lucas guessed it was one of the Cowboys from the crowd that day. Sadie never cashed it. She framed it, and hung it on the wall of the tack room above Chance's first halter, and the photo Greg had printed from the reporter's video. The moment Chance took his first breath under Sadie's trembling hands. She looked at it every morning before chores. It reminded her of everything she'd almost walked away from. Then, one afternoon, in the middle of mucking stalls, her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, wiped her hands on her jeans, and answered. A breath. Then a voice. Small. Worn. Hi, Mom. Sadie couldn't speak at first. She leaned against the wall, breath catching. I saw the video, her daughter said. I read the story. It was all over my feed. I didn't think it was you, but I kept watching, and I don't know. I just needed to hear your voice. Sadie swallowed hard. I never stopped waiting for yours, she said. A silence fell between them, but it was soft, healing. Can I come visit? Her daughter asked. Sadie's voice broke, just a little. You don't have to ask. After the call, she walked to Chance's stall, knelt down, and ran her fingers through his now softened mane. His legs were steadier now, his breath fuller, his eyes brighter. You did that, she whispered. The barn was quiet but alive, filled with the deep sounds of living things. Muffled hoofbeats, the rustle of straw, the slow breathing of animals at peace. Chance nuzzled her shoulder, and she closed her eyes. Outside, night bloomed in full, and somewhere beyond the ridge, headlights traced the long dirt road home.